How y'all doing today, man? I want to start off by introducing myself at the start of the videos from now on for those who either may be new to the channel or just may not know who I am. My name's Alan Thompson. Um, I've been a content creator now for probably over about maybe 10 years or so. Um, and I've been following God. I've had a yearn to learn more and know more about him now for about close to 2 years. It's been a little bit over a year and a half. And man, he's done some amazing things in and through my life. Just to be quite frank and quite honest with you. And he's put it on my heart to just be a blessing to others out there with the words and the wisdom he's given me as I read and I continue to learn more about him. He just opens my eyes to so many things. And today we have a topic that actually starts in Second Chronicles. For all the ones who don't know, Solomon obviously is one of the wisest people, well, the wisest person in the Bible, in accordance to what the word says. But this story follows a few kings after Solomon passed away. So I think it's more like Solomon's great grandson, if I'm not mistaken. But his name is Asa. And I was reading this story this morning in Second Chronicles that really touched home for me. But really, I just wanted to start it off with a visual. Picture that you have a challenge set in front of you, right? An obstacle that's in your way. And you have no resources to really, combat or come against or overcome that obstacle, at least in your eyes. And you say, you know what, the one thing that I have right now is God. I can go to him, I can call on him now. He may not be tangible where I can go and tap him on the shoulder, or I can see exactly what he's doing, but I know I can call him. Let me call on God. You call on him and God shows up for you in that situation. He sees you through, not just to the point where you just barely survive. He sees you through to where you flourish through that situation. You come out on the other end of that situation better than you went in. He's provided for you to where you have extra. You have more than enough for you to be sustained and taken care of, right? And then you go a long while without any challenges, any obstacles. You're still living for God. You're still seeking him. You're still making sure that, after that victory, it was like, man, God did it for me. I am standing on God and on his principles, on his word. And after time, as time goes on, as any person would, when you don't face those challenges, but you're still living in the blessing, sometimes you can start to kick your feet back. You can start to relax a little bit. And your zeal for God may begin to dwindle a little bit. You don't have the same passion that you had when he first brought you out of that situation. Again, when you had no resources outside of just saying, God, I need you. Only you can do this. Nobody else can. But after that period of rest, that period of peace, you then face another challenge. Now, you still have the blessings God initially gave you, right? And again, you haven't really, necessarily needed God where you had to call on him how you did the first time. So the challenge arises and you say, immediately you go to, oh, you know what? Say, for instance, the blessings God gave you with some money. He gave you overabundance of it in that first situation when you called on him. Said, man, God, it seemed like I'm being overtaken. I can't pay my bill. I can't take care of my family. And he says, you know what? I'll send you a rushing wind of things that you need to sustain you and even to give you overflow where you're comfortable. You've been sustained with it this entire time. That challenge arises again where it's like, okay, now you need some finances for something. A challenge arises and you say, you know what? Oh, I already have this right here. Let me go ahead and just use what God already gave me to take care of this. In those moments, I think, as a human, as a person, logically speaking, we would think, well, God gave me this blessing already, and this is a financial thing. Like, he already blessed me with the finances to take care of this. So why wouldn't I just, use the finances and take care of it? One would think that, yeah, it is just that copy and paste. Yeah, you should just do that. But that then starts to negate God in the midst of the situation. Because if we bring it back to where we started, God blessed you with that. When you didn't have the resources to take care of that situation, you said, all I have is you, God. So how come when he blesses us with the blessing, we then say, okay, let me use the blessing for, essentially what it's meant for, versus saying, you know what, God, you gave me this blessing. And in my mind, I'm planning on just using this blessing you gave me to take care of this challenge or this obstacle. But what is your will? Your will may not be for me to use that. Your will may not be for me to use it in the way that I'm thinking to use it, in the practical way that we may think to actually use it with our own wisdom. He may be thinking of doing it a completely different way within us or within our situation to still show himself mighty, that our faith may be strengthened in him. So it's important that in every situation, we make sure that we are relying on God. We're placing it on him. And none of us are perfect, so none of us are always going to get it right all the time. But if we're more mindful of it, we can implement it and be more mindful of it as we continue on this journey with him. And that's where our story was. It was Asa. The first situation was a group of Ethiopians were coming up against him. This is at the time where Israel had split and they had two kings. Solomon's son, Rehoboam, was not seeking God. So God said, you know what, I'm going to take Israel. He was ruling the entire kingdom of Israel. God said, you know what, since you're not seeking my face like your father did, I'll remove this from you, and I'll still keep an inkling of the 12 tribes for the sake of David, because of the covenant God had with David. God stays true to his word no matter what. He says, I will still give you that. Although you're not following me, I'm not going to let you rule over the entire 12 tribes, but I'll give you Judah or Jerusalem. I'll give you that. The other 11 tribes or 10 tribes are going to be ruled by someone else for this time. So Asa was a descendant of Rehoboam, who was over just Judah or Jerusalem. He was a descendant of him. I believe it was Rehoboam's grandson, if I'm not mistaken. And Asa followed God for the beginning of his reign, essentially. As I was saying, a group of Ethiopians, 1 million of them, so not a small group, a large group, was coming up against the children of Judah or Jerusalem. And Jerusalem, I believe, had 580,000 people. So they had a pretty large group, but compared to 1 million, that's almost a little less than double the size of what you have. But in that situation, Asa immediately, he didn't think of, hey, well, let me, try to do this or that. He immediately called on God. He went out to the battlefield. The troops came out, and Asa went out and said, God, we need you in this situation. Only you can overcome this. No man can overcome you, and we're relying on you. And God smote that group of Ethiopians to the point that, again, it was 580,000 of them versus 1 million of the people that were coming up against them. But because he relied on God, they overcame them to the point that they even ended up taking spoil and seizing gold and silver and cattle and all these different things from this group of 1 million people. That's the type of victory God gave them because they relied on him. But that was because they had no other resources. Israel was wealthy when Solomon was king, but after Rehoboam kind of strayed, the resources began to dwindle, where it wasn't the same as it was when Solomon was around. So when they gathered that silver, gathered that gold, that was there. Okay, God, thank you for supplying our needs, for blessing us beyond what we could have imagined. All we asked was that you helped us to overcome this group. But God blessed them to where you overcame them, and I bless you on top of that with an abundance because you relied on me. So that's the same as us saying, hey, God, in this situation, I have no way to do this. Can you do this for me? Because I know only you can do it. And he blesses you beyond what you could even imagine or think. Fast forward, Asa has a group of, it's actually Israel. So the other 10 tribes are coming up against Judah. I believe it was Baasha, Baasha. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. was coming up against Asa. Now, he had 20 years of peace. Judah had 20 years of peace between when they called on God and relied on God against the 1 million group of soldiers on the first hand. 20 years of peace in between that and when Baasha came up against them. But when Baasha came up against them, they cut off certain trade routes and things like that that was bringing people in so that nobody could come in, nobody could go out. So if you're trying to get wheat, or you're trying to get barley in, or you need, resources for you to get things in and out, you can't get that in and out because he cut them off. Essentially, it's a siege where you cut off access from the outside and from the inside to try to get an enemy to surrender or forfeit, so to speak. Asa in that moment immediately says, you know what? The resources God gave us. Okay, let me take this gold and this silver. I'll take all of this up and I'll give that to the king of Syria to come up against Baasha, which it didn't really explain if, Syria was stronger, but I would assume Syria was stronger for him to go to them immediately and say, hey, I need to, hire you to take care of this issue for me. That was him relying on the blessing God gave him before he relied on God himself. Before saying, okay, God, okay, I'm thinking I can do this. This would make sense for me to take what you gave me and pay them to do this. But if I'm wrong in assuming that, please just guide me in this. What is your will in this? It's not wrong for us to have a thought, but bring the thought to God and line it up with his word first. Line it up to see if, hey, do you have something else for me though? Because yeah, I'm thinking this, but what's your will, God? I don't want to go without you saying, yes, go ahead and do this. I don't want to get off track or off center or, off course with you. So Asa in that situation relied on the blessing God gave him before he relied on God. And while the situation still worked out for his good, because Syria did end up fighting off or holding off Baasha and Israel, so much so to where they fled, and Baasha and Israel no longer held that siege or tried to come up against Asa, Judah, and Israel. But also you depleted your resources. He depleted all God gave him in that siege where they gathered all that stuff up. He gave all of that, or at least a good amount of that, to the king of Syria. The king of Syria came in. He did what he was supposed to do, or what he was paid to do. But in that situation, had Asa went to God first, who knows if God would say, you know what? I'll take care of this again like I did the first time, and you can keep the blessings that I gave you. And I may even bless you with more because of your faithfulness to me, the same way I did the first time. But instead, we may never know what God's will would have been had he went with that mindset. After that happened, Asa went astray from God. A prophet came and said, hey, you didn't rely on God in this. You relied on him the first time, but this time you did not rely on God. You went your own way. You didn't seek him for it. And because of that, God is not pleased with you. And instead of Asa saying, you know what, let me take a step back. I'm wrong. Let me fix that. Let me correct this situation. God, I'm sorry that I didn't seek you in this situation. It's over now because Syria has already came up against and they've already warded them off and held them off now. But I'm sorry, I want to come back to you. Instead of doing that, Asa got upset at that prophet, threw that prophet in jail. And after that, he got sick. There was some sort of disease with his feet. And even in that situation, you still had an opportunity to turn to God. And what did he do? He stayed with a hardened heart. It said instead of him seeking God, even in that, he sought the care of the physicians. And on one of the footnotes, it said, okay, there was nothing wrong with him seeking help or seeking, hey, let me go to the doctor and see what's going on with my feet here. But you never sought God in that at any point in time either. So yes, you can go and seek them, but also seek God as well. God may give you more than God is going to give you more than man can give you. He never sought God. His heart stayed hardened in that situation. Let's not find ourselves in a situation like that where Okay, sometimes we may not seek God first and we may just jump to the first conclusion. Okay, it makes sense for me to do this first anyways, because this is a blessing God gave me. Now, yes, we can try to correct that initially and not even be in that situation and seek God initially to start off with. But if we do make the mistake of saying, I didn't seek you first, let's not have a hardened heart where we don't seek God beyond that and we continue to further and further and distance ourselves more and more from God. He doesn't want us to be distant. He just wants us to rely on him, knowing that he can do any and everything. Yes, sometimes we think we know it, but just bring it to God and let him confirm it. He may have given you that thought. But if we're not going to say, hey, God, I want to just make sure this is what you want me to do, and then we move on. Let's be more diligent in our reliance on God. Let's be more intentional in our reliance on God. And this goes for me, myself as well. Like I said, none of us are perfect. So, man, that's all I wanted to come on here and say today. Let's make sure we keep our eyes and our hearts, our minds, our intentions focused on God. And even if we fall astray, don't be afraid to go back to him, man. Don't let the enemy cloud your thoughts with you can't go back. It's too late. You already made the choice. It's never too late. Turn, repent, say, Father, I'm sorry that I did not rely on you. I didn't seek you in this, but I'm seeking you now.